I printed 85 save-the-date cards for my wedding. I never sent them. All 85 were torn to pieces under his shoes, and I ended up in the hospital. But that's when he didn't know my fiancé had the very job he was fired from, internal auditing. And then every shady transaction began to surface. They thought I'd stay silent. Even as the bride, they were wrong. I sent the first invitations to 3 places, HR, a lawyer, and his new wife. My name is Jenna, and I'm 32 years old. That morning, I stood in my apartment kitchen, running my fingers over the stack of freshly printed save-the-date cards, 85 perfect cream-colored envelopes, each one carefully addressed in my best handwriting. The wedding was still 6 months away, but Owen and I wanted to give everyone plenty of notice. I decided to handle the ones to family first. It felt more personal that way, more meaningful. Despite everything that had happened over the years, I still harbored this naive hope that maybe, just maybe, this wedding could bring us all together. The drive to my mother and stepfather's house took 40 minutes. I'd made this trip countless times, but today felt different. The cards sat beside me in the passenger seat, and I kept glancing at them at red lights, second-guessing my decision to include Victor in the wedding party plans. Their house looked the same as always, a modest 2-story colonial with vinyl siding that Victor had installed himself 5 years ago. The lawn needed mowing, and the flower beds my mother once tended with such care were overrun with weeds. I parked in the driveway behind Victor's truck, the one with Victor Construction still emblazoned on the side, though the business had been defunct for years. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Jenna. What a surprise. Come in. Come in." The house smelled like coffee and cigarettes. Victor's cigarettes. Mom had quit years ago, but he still smoked 2 packs a day, filling their home with that acrid smell that clung to everything. "Is Victor home?" I asked, following her into the living room. "In his office," she said, gesturing down the hall. "He's working on some paperwork." I almost laughed. Victor's office was a converted bedroom, where he spent most of his time these days, pretending to run a business that existed only on paper. But I kept my thoughts to myself and knocked on his door. "What?" his gruff voice called out. "It's Jenna. I have something for you and Mom. Come in." Victor sat behind a cheap desk covered in papers, an ashtray overflowing beside him. He looked up at me with those cold, grey eyes that had intimidated me since I was 15. At 61, he'd aged poorly, his face ruddy from drinking, his belly straining against a stained t-shirt. "What do you want?" He didn't even pretend to be pleasant. I held up the envelopes, the save-the-date cards for the wedding. His eyes narrowed as I handed him one. He tore it open without ceremony, scanned the card, and his face darkened. "June 15th, he read aloud. "Owen Fitzgerald and Jenna Morrison request the pleasure of your company." He looked up sharply. "Morrison, you're not even taking his name." "We haven't decided yet," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "And I see you already sent these out to others." His voice was rising. "The return address has a tracking number. This is from a batch mailing." My stomach tightened. Of course, he'd noticed. Victor noticed everything when it came to perceived slights. "We sent a few to Owen's family first. They live farther away. And so his family is more important than yours." Victor stood up, the card crumpling in his fist. "More important than the man who kept a roof over your head." "That's not what I meant." "You ungrateful little." He came around the desk faster than I expected. "After everything I've done for you, after all the money I've spent, money." The word escaped before I could stop it. "You mean my money. The $90,000 I've given you over the years." His face turned purple. "That was a loan, a business investment that you've never paid back. The backhand came without warning. Not the first time he'd hit me, but harder than usual. I stumbled backward, catching myself on the door frame, feeling the sharp edge dig into my shoulder. "Victor!" My mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Stay out of this, Linda." He grabbed the stack of envelopes from my hand. These are what you think of us." He threw them on the floor and ground them under his work boots, the cream paper tearing, the addresses smearing. I tried to grab the remaining cards, but he shoved me hard. I fell backward, my head catching the corner of his desk. Pain exploded through my skull, and I felt something warm trickling down my face. "Victor, stop!" my mother screamed. Through blurred vision, I saw him destroying every last envelope, stomping on them like a child having a tantrum. 19 cards, meticulously addressed, reduced to confetti under his feet. "There's your save the date," he spat. "You want to disrespect me? You can have your wedding without us." I pulled myself up, one hand pressed to my bleeding head. My mother stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't move to help me. She never did. "I need to go to the hospital," I managed to say. "Drama queen," Victor muttered, lighting another cigarette. "Get out of my house." I stumbled to my car, my vision swimming. The last thing I saw before driving away was my mother in the doorway, wringing her hands, but not following, not checking if I was okay, not standing up to him. At the hospital, they put in 12 stitches and diagnosed a mild concussion. When the nurse asked how it happened, I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. She called the police. But sitting in that hospital bed, waiting for Owen to arrive, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't going to be like all the other times. I wasn't 15 anymore, dependent on their roof over my head. I wasn't 25, still hoping for a father figure who would never materialize. I was 32 years old, successful in my own right, with a fiancé who saw through their facade from day one, and I was done being their victim. When Owen walked in, his face went white. "Jesus, Jenna, what did he do?" "The last thing he'll ever do to me," I said, taking his hand. "I need you to help me with something. Remember those financial irregularities you mentioned about Victor's business?" A grim smile crossed his face. "I remember everything." "What do you need?" "Everything. Every transaction, every shell company, every tax dodge. I've been keeping records for 6 years, Jenna. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'll crawl back like I always do. But he just made the biggest mistake of his life." I squeezed Owen's hand. "He forgot that I know where all the bodies are buried. And now I'm going to dig them all up." Owen kissed my forehead gently, avoiding the bandage. "Whatever you need, I've got your back." As I lay there planning my next moves, I thought about those torn save-the-date cards scattered on Victor's floor. He thought he'd won by destroying them, but all he'd done was free me from any obligation to play nice. The real invitations were about to go out, and the recipients would be far more interested in what I had to share than any wedding date. The painkillers made everything fuzzy, but some memories remained sharp, no matter what. Lying in that hospital bed, I found myself traveling back 17 years to when everything changed. I was 15 when my mother met Victor at a church function. My father had been dead for 3 years, a heart attack at 42 that left us struggling financially and emotionally. Mom was lonely, working 2 jobs to keep our small apartment, and I was angry at the world for taking my dad away. Victor seemed like salvation wrapped in flannel shirts and work boots. He owned a construction supply business, drove a new truck, and took my mother to nice restaurants. He was different from my gentle, bookish father in every way possible. Where Dad had been soft-spoken and encouraging, Victor was loud and commanding. Where Dad had helped me with homework and attended every school play, Victor never seemed to notice. Victor made it clear that all that artsy stuff was a waste of time. You need to be practical, he told me the first time we met for dinner. Pretty girls like you don't need to worry about college. Find a good man to take care of you. I'd looked at my mother, expecting her to defend my straight-A report cards, my dreams of becoming an accountant like Dad, but she just smiled nervously and changed the subject. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony. I wore a scratchy pink dress that Victor picked out because it was appropriate for a young lady. We moved into his house, the same one I'd just been thrown out of, and I got the smallest bedroom, the one that would later become his office. The changes started immediately. Victor had rules. So many rules. No friends over without permission. No phone calls after 8. No wasting electricity by staying up late to study. No borrowing the car unless it was for something useful. And definitely no talking back. I'm not your father, he told me one night, when I'd complained about missing a school dance, because he needed me to help at his store. I'm the man who keeps a roof over your head. Show some respect. Mom tried to smooth things over at first. He's just not used to teenagers, she'd whisper when Victor yelled at me for laughing too loud while watching TV with her. Give him time. But time only made things worse. When I turned 16 and got a job at the mall, Victor demanded half my paycheck for household expenses. When I protested that I was saving for college, he laughed. College? What for? You're not smart enough for that. Besides, your mother needs help with bills. Mom, I'd looked at her desperately. She'd avoided my eyes. Victor knows about finances. Honey, we should listen to him. That became the pattern. Victor would demand. I would resist, and Mom would cave every time. When I won a scholarship that would cover most of my tuition at the state university, Victor tried to convince me not to go. Why waste 4 years when you could be working? I could get you a job in the office at my store. Good pay, stable work. I went anyway, using loans to cover what the scholarship didn't. It was my first real act of defiance. And Victor punished me by barely speaking to me for a year. Mom would sneak phone calls to my dorm when he was at work, always ending with, "Don't tell Victor the first called." Kyle was born when I was 19. During my sophomore year, my half-brother arrived like Victor's golden ticket, finally, a child of his own blood. The difference in how he treated Kyle compared to me was stark. Where I'd been told college was a waste, Kyle was destined for greatness. Where I'd had to hand over half my mall earnings, Kyle got a savings account started before he could walk. It's different with boys, Victor explained when I visited during winter break and saw Kyle's nursery, bigger than my old room and filled with expensive toys. They need to be set up for success. I graduated with my accounting degree despite Victor's prediction that I'd drop out. I got a job at a firm in the city and started building my own life, but the calls from Mom never stopped. Victor's business is struggling. Could you help out just this once? Kyle needs braces, and insurance won't cover it all. The roof needs repairs, and we're short this month. Always we when they needed money. Always Victor when decisions were made. The first time I sent money, $2,000 for the roof, I told myself it was just once. I was helping my mother, not him. But once became twice, became monthly, became expected. Family helps family, Mom would say, using Dad's favorite phrase like a weapon against me. Dad had meant family supports each other emotionally. She meant family pays Victor's bills. By the time I was 25, I was sending $500 a month. By 28, it was $1,000. The requests got bigger, more urgent. Victor's business was failing. Could I co-sign a loan? Just temporarily. Kyle needed a car for his 16th birthday. Surely I wanted to help my brother. The house needed renovations. Wasn't I grateful for having lived there rent-free as a teenager? That last one made me laugh bitterly. Rent-free. I'd paid rent retroactively 100 times over, but I kept paying because, despite everything, that was my mother asking, the woman who'd sung me to sleep after Dad died, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to keep us afloat before Victor came along. She was still in there somewhere, trapped under Victor's thumb, just like I'd been. The manipulation was expert, really. Victor never asked me directly for money. He'd tell Mom they were struggling, paint dire pictures of bankruptcy and homelessness, and she'd call me in tears. How could I say no to my crying mother? How could I let my baby brother suffer for his father's failures? So, I paid and paid and paid, even as I watched Victor buy a new truck, even as Kyle got every gaming system the day it came out, even as his mom wore the same clothes year after year, too afraid to ask for anything for herself. Why don't you leave him? I asked her once during a rare lunch without Victor. She'd looked at me like I'd suggested she cut off her own arm. He's my husband, Kyle's father. Where would we go? I'd help you. No. The word came out sharp, frightened. You don't understand, Jenna. It's complicated. It wasn't complicated. It was fear. Fear of being alone again. Fear of failing. Fear of admitting she'd chosen security over her daughter's well-being. The memories felt heavy as I lay in that hospital bed, Owen's hand warm in mine. 17 years of being the outsider in my own family. 17 years of watching my mother choose him over me, again and again. 17 years of paying for the privilege of being treated like an unwelcome guest in what had once been my home. But remembering why I'd stayed so long, love for my mother, hope that things would change. Guilt over Kyle growing up in that house also reminded me why I couldn't stay any longer. Victor had finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and Mom had stood there and let him. You okay? Owen asked softly, pulling me from my reverie. I squeezed his hand. Just thinking about how long I've let this go on. Hey, he touched my face gently. You were a kid when it started. You did what you had to do to survive. I'm not a kid anymore. No, he agreed, his eyes hardening. You're not, and neither am I. So, what do we do now? I thought about all those financial records I'd kept, every bank transfer, every loan that would never be repaid, every tax document that didn't quite add up if you knew where to look. Now, I managed a small smile despite the pain. Now we show Victor what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. He taught me to be practical. After all, time to put that lesson to use. Owen Fitzgerald wasn't supposed to be my type. When I first met him at a professional development seminar 4 years ago, he struck me as too quiet, too observant. While other attendees worked aggressively over cheap wine, Owen stood by the window, methodically working through a plate of cheese cubes, and watching everyone else like he was cataloging their secrets. Internal auditing, he'd said when I asked what he did. Basically, I find out where companies are lying to themselves. That sounds... I searched for a polite word. Boring. He'd smiled then, transforming his serious face. It is until you find something. Then it's the most interesting job in the world. We'd ended up talking for 3 hours about work. At first, he was fascinated that I'd chosen accounting. He wanted to know what drew me to numbers and systems. But then the conversation shifted, became personal. He had this way of asking questions that didn't feel invasive, just curious. You keep checking your phone, he'd observed around hour 2, waiting for bad news. I'd laughed it off, but he was right. Mom had been texting about another financial crisis. Victor needed new equipment for a job that would turn everything around. Family stuff. I'd said vaguely. He'd nodded, like that explained everything. Let me guess. Someone who thinks your success means you owe them. The accuracy of it had stunned me. How did you see it? All the time in my work. Family businesses are the worst for financial abuse. People think blood means boundaries don't apply. I should have been offended at the term financial abuse. Instead, I felt seen for the first time in years. We started meeting for coffee, then lunch, then dinner. Owen never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give, but he had this quiet persistence, this way of being present that made me want to tell him things. My stepfather owns a construction supply company, I finally admitted 6 months into our friendship. Owen, it's complicated. Owen had listened to the whole story without interrupting. The failing business, the constant requests for money, the way Victor treated Mom and me versus Kyle. When I finished expecting judgment or pity, he'd simply asked, "Do you have records?" Of what? The money you've given them, bank transfers, cancelled checks, anything. Yes, but, good. Keep them. You might need them someday. It was such a practical response that I'd almost cried. No lectures about enabling them, no judgment about my choices, just quiet, solid advice. Owen told me his own story over time. Parents who'd divorced when he was 12. A father who'd embezzled from his employer and tried to drag Owen's mother down with him. Years of legal battles that had shaped Owen's career choice. I figured if I understood how financial crimes worked, I'd never be a victim again, he'd explained. Turns out I'm really good at seeing patterns other people miss. He was good at seeing other patterns, too. Like how I always tensed when my phone rang, or how I'd make excuses for bruises that had nothing to do with clumsiness. He hits you. It wasn't a question. We'd been dating for a year when Owen said it, his voice carefully neutral over dinner. Not often, I'd whispered, ashamed. Only when he's really angry. Once is too often. It's complicated. My mom chooses to stay. You don't have to. But I did, for 2 more years, through Carl starting community college and dropping out after 1 semester, through Victor's business officially folding and him starting a new venture that was definitely going to work this time, through Mom developing stress-related health issues that she refused to see a doctor for. Owen never gave me an ultimatum. He just stayed steady, reliable, reminding me through his actions that relationships didn't have to be built on fear and obligation. The proposal had been perfect, quiet, private, just us on a hiking trail we loved. No big gestures, no public spectacle, just Owen asking if I'd marry him while we watched the sunset from a mountaintop. I know your family situation is complicated, he'd said, spinning the ring on my finger. But I want you to know you'll never have to handle it alone again. Whatever you need, however you want to deal with them, I'm here. Even if I want to keep trying with them. Even then, though, he'd paused, choosing his words carefully. I've been doing some research. My stomach had dropped. What kind of research? Public records stuff. Your stepfather's business dealings, Jenna. Some of what I found, it's not just bad business. It's fraud. He'd shown me later at home. Shell companies registered to addresses that didn't exist. Tax filings that didn't match bank records. A business partner who'd sued Victor 8 years ago for embezzlement and won. This is why he needs your money, Owen explained, pulling up document after document. He's been playing shell games with debt for years, robbing Peter to pay Paul, using your cash to stay afloat. But his business is legitimate. He has contracts. Had, past tense. Most of his current income comes from jobs he's subcontracting to others, and skimming from them. And this, he'd pointed to a registration document, Carl Victor Construction LLC isn't even in Victor's name. It's registered to someone named Lena Grant. Who? Owen had given me a look full of sympathy. I think you should ask your mother that question. But I hadn't. I'd filed the information away. Told myself it wasn't my problem. Victor's schemes were his own business, as long as they didn't affect me directly. Except they did affect me. Every transfer I made, every check I wrote, I was potentially implicated in whatever he was doing. And Owen knew it. I'm not pushing, he'd said that night. But someday this is going to blow up. And when it does, you need to be protected. So, I'd started keeping records, screenshots of every text message asking for money, copies of every bank transfer, a spreadsheet tracking dates, amounts, and stated purposes for each payment. Think of it as insurance, Owen had suggested. You may never need it, but if I do, I'll be glad I have it. He'd kissed me then, gentle and understanding. Exactly. And Jenna, whatever happens, we'll handle it together. Now, sitting in the hospital while a police officer took my statement, I was grateful for Owen's quiet paranoia, for his insistence on documentation, for his steady presence beside me as I explained years of financial manipulation and occasional violence. The money stuff is complicated, the officer said, frowning at her notes. But assault is assault. Do you want to press charges? I looked at Owen. He took my hand but didn't speak. This had to be my choice. Yes, I said firmly. And I want a restraining order. There's more you need to know about his business dealings, too. I have records. One thing at a time, the officer interrupted kindly. Let's focus on today's incident first. You can speak with the detective about the financial concerns later. After she left, Owen pulled his chair closer to my bed. You sure about this? Once we start down this road, there's no going back. I know. I touched the bandage on my head, but I'm done being afraid. Done enabling him. Done pretending this is normal. What about your mom? Kyle? The question hurt, but it was fair. They've made their choices. Now I'm making mine. Owen nodded slowly. Okay, then we do this right. I've got connections from my old job, forensic accountants, who specialize in family financial abuse cases. And that name, Lena Grant. I did more digging and she lives 2 states over. According to social media, she's been married to someone named Victor Grant for 15 years. The ring looked familiar. I stared at the photo. It was Victor, younger and smiling, wearing a wedding ring I'd never seen before, standing next to a woman who wasn't my mother. He's married to someone else. Looks like it. Which means your mother's marriage might not even be legal, which means she has no claim to anything if she tries to leave. I felt sick. That's why she's so scared. She knows. Maybe. Or maybe she doesn't know, and he's using other threats. Either way, Owen squeezed my hand, we are going to find out, and we are going to make sure you are protected when it all comes out. I thought about those save-the-date cards torn to pieces on Victor's floor. He'd thought he was destroying my happiness, putting me back in my place. Instead, he'd freed me to destroy something much more important to him, the carefully constructed lies that kept his house of cards standing. I love you, I told Owen, meaning it more than ever. I love you too, he replied. Now, let's talk about exactly what documentation we have and how we are going to use it. Owen Fitzgerald wasn't supposed to be my type. When I first met him at a professional development seminar 4 years ago, he struck me as too quiet, too observant. While other attendees worked aggressively over cheap wine. Owen stood by the window, methodically working through a plate of cheese cubes, and watching everyone else like he was cataloging their secrets. Internal auditing, he'd said when I asked what he did. Basically, I find out where companies are lying to themselves. That sounds... I searched for a polite word. Boring. He'd smiled then, transforming his serious face. It is until you find something. Then it's the most interesting job in the world. We'd ended up talking for 3 hours about work. At first, he was fascinated that I'd chosen accounting. He wanted to know what drew me to numbers and systems, but then the conversation shifted, became personal. He had this way of asking questions that didn't feel invasive, just curious. You keep checking your phone, he'd observed around hour 2, waiting for bad news. I'd laughed it off, but he was right. Mom had been texting about another financial crisis. Victor needed new equipment for a job that would turn everything around. Family stuff, I'd said vaguely. Ah, he'd nodded, like that explained everything. Someone who thinks your success means you owe them. The accuracy of it had stunned me. How did you see it? All the time in my work. Family businesses are the worst for financial abuse. People think blood means boundaries don't apply. I should have been offended at the term financial abuse. Instead, I felt seen for the first time in years. We started meeting for coffee, then lunch, then dinner. Owen never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. But he had this quiet persistence, this way of being present that made me want to tell him things. My stepfather owns a construction supply company, I finally admitted 6 months into our friendship. Owen, it's complicated. Owen had listened to the whole story without interrupting. The failing business, the constant requests for money, the way Victor treated Mom and me versus Kyle. When I finished, expecting judgment or pity, he'd simply asked, "Do you have records?" Of what? The money you've given them, bank transfers, cancelled checks, anything. Yes, but, good. Keep them. You might need them someday. It was such a practical response that I'd almost cried. No lectures about enabling them. No judgment about my choices. Just quiet, solid advice. Owen told me his own story over time. Parents who'd divorced when he was 12. A father who'd embezzled from his employer and tried to drag Owen's mother down with him. Years of legal battles that had shaped Owen's career choice. I figured if I understood how financial crimes worked, I'd never be a victim again, he'd explained. Turns out I'm really good at seeing patterns other people miss. He was good at seeing other patterns, too. Like how I always tensed when my phone rang, or how I'd make excuses for bruises that had nothing to do with clumsiness. He hits you. It wasn't a question. We'd been dating for a year when Owen said it, his voice carefully neutral over dinner. Not often, I'd whispered, ashamed. Only when he's really angry. Once is too often. It's complicated. My mom chooses to stay. You don't have to. But I did, for 2 more years, through Carl starting community college and dropping out after 1 semester. Through Victor's business officially folding and him starting a new venture that was definitely going to work this time. Through Mom developing stress-related health issues that she refused to see a doctor for. Owen never gave me an ultimatum. He just stayed steady, reliable, reminding me through his actions that relationships didn't have to be built on fear and obligation. The proposal had been perfect, quiet, private, just us on a hiking trail we loved. No big gestures, no public spectacle, just Owen asking if I'd marry him while we watched the sunset from a mountaintop. I know your family situation is complicated, he'd said, spinning the ring on my finger, but I want you to know you'll never have to handle it alone again. Whatever you need, however you want to deal with them, I'm here. Even if I want to keep trying with them. Even then, though, he'd paused, choosing his words carefully. I've been doing some research. My stomach had dropped. What kind of research? Public record stuff. Your stepfather's business dealings, Jenna. Some of what I found, it's not just bad business. It's fraud. He'd shown me later at home. Shell companies registered to addresses that didn't exist. Tax filings that didn't match bank records. A business partner, who'd sued Victor 8 years ago for embezzlement and won. "This is why he needs your money," Owen explained, pulling up document after document. "He's been playing shell games with debt for years. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, using your cash to stay afloat. But his business is legitimate. He has contracts. Had, past tense. Most of his current income comes from jobs he's subcontracting to others, and skimming from them. And this," he'd pointed to a registration document, "Carl Victor Construction LLC isn't even in Victor's name. It's registered to someone named Lena Grant." "Who?" Owen had given me a look full of sympathy. "I think you should ask your mother that question." But I hadn't. I'd filed the information away, told myself it wasn't my problem. Victor's schemes were his own business, as long as they didn't affect me directly. Except they did affect me. Every transfer I made, every check I wrote, I was potentially implicated in whatever he was doing. And Owen knew it. "I'm not pushing," he'd said that night. "But someday this is going to blow up. And when it does, you need to be protected." So I'd started keeping better records, screenshots of every text message asking for money, copies of every bank transfer, a spreadsheet tracking dates, amounts, and stated purposes for each payment. "Think of it as insurance," Owen had suggested. "You may never need it, but if you do, you'll be glad you have it." He'd kissed me then, gentle and understanding. "Exactly. And Jenna, whatever happens, we'll handle it together." Now, sitting in the hospital while a police officer took my statement, I was grateful for Owen's quiet paranoia, for his insistence on documentation, for his steady presence beside me as I explained years of financial manipulation and occasional violence. "The money stuff is complicated," the officer said, frowning at her notes. "But assault is assault. Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Owen. He took my hand, but didn't speak. This had to be my choice. "Yes," I said firmly. "And I want a restraining order." "There's more you need to know about his business dealings, too. I have records." "One thing at a time," the officer interrupted kindly. "Let's focus on today's incident first. You can speak with the detective about the financial concerns later." After she left, Owen pulled his chair closer to my bed. "You sure about this? Once we start down this road, there's no going back." "I know." I touched the bandage on my head, but I'm done being afraid. Done enabling him. Done pretending this is normal. "What about your mom? Kyle?" The question hurt, but it was fair. They've made their choices. Now I'm making mine. Owen nodded slowly. "Okay, then we do this right. I've got connections from my old job, forensic accountants, who specialize in family financial abuse cases. And that name, Lena Grant. I did more digging and she lives 2 states over." According to social media, he pulled out his phone, showing me a Facebook profile. "She's been married to someone named Victor Grant for 15 years. The ring looked familiar. I stared at the photo. It was Victor, younger and smiling, wearing a wedding ring I'd never seen before, standing next to a woman who wasn't my mother. "He's married to someone else." "Looks like it. Which means your mother's marriage might not even be legal, which means she has no claim to anything if she tries to leave." I felt sick. That's why she's so scared. She knows. Maybe. Or maybe she doesn't know, and he's using other threats. Either way, Owen squeezed my hand. "We are going to find out, and we are going to make sure you are protected when it all comes out." I thought about those save-the-date cards torn to pieces on Victor's floor. He'd thought he was destroying my happiness, putting me back in my place. Instead, he'd freed me to destroy something much more important to him, the carefully constructed lies that kept his house of cards standing. "I love you," I told Owen, meaning it more than ever. I love you too, he replied. Now, let's talk about exactly what documentation we have and how we are going to use it. The week after the hospital visit was a blur of rage and revelation. I took time off work, my first real break in years, and Owen turned our dining room into a makeshift investigation center. Laptops, printouts, filing boxes, and color-coded folders spread across every surface. We need to be methodical, Owen said, creating a spreadsheet that would make any auditor weep with joy. Every transaction, every date, every connection. I'd kept good records, but seeing it all laid out was staggering. 6 years of bank transfers, totaling $93,847. The memo lines told their own story. But Owen was finding more than just my transfers. He'd taken an extended lunch to visit the courthouse, returning with a box of public records that painted an even darker picture. Your stepfather is quite the entrepreneur, he said dryly, spreading out incorporation documents. 7 different LLCs in the last 10 years, all dissolved or abandoned within 2 years. I studied the papers. Victor Construction Incorporated, VMG Building Supply, Grant Construction Services, KNV Home Improvement. The names blurred together, but one pattern stood out. Grant, I said. He used that name on half of these. His real last name, apparently, is Victor Grant. He started using your mother's maiden name, Morrison, about 12 years ago. Right around the time Lena Grant filed for divorce in Michigan, but they are still married. The divorce was never finalized. She withdrew the petition. Want to guess why? I thought about my mother. Too scared to leave. He threatened her, or promised to change. Either way, he moved states, started fresh with a new name, and found your mom. Owen pulled up a timeline on his laptop. The overlap is actually impressive. He married your mother while still legally married to Lena. The implications made my head spin. So, Mom's marriage is void completely. She's not entitled to anything. No spousal support, no claim to assets, nothing. And if she's been filing joint tax returns, she's liable for any fraud he committed. I felt sick. She doesn't know, Owen. She can't know. She would never stay if, are you sure? His voice was gentle but firm. Because from what I'm seeing, she signed a lot of documents over the years. Business licenses, loan applications, tax forms. I wanted to defend her, but the evidence was overwhelming. Mom's signature on papers for businesses she never worked for. Her name on accounts that only Victor accessed. Either she was complicit, or dangerously naive. There's more, Owen continued, pulling up bank records. Remember how you always transferred money to Kyle Victor Construction LLC? Look at the account owner. I leaned in to read the screen. The business account was registered to Lena Grant with an address in Michigan. He's been sending the money to his real wife. Some of it, the rest, Owen switched screens, goes to another account registered to a woman named Melissa Vaughn. 24 years old. Address listed as. He paused, the same as Kyle's apartment. His girlfriend. The pieces clicked into place. The one Kyle wanted me to pay tuition for. She's holding assets for Victor. Bingo. Classic asset protection scheme. Can't seize what's not in your name. Owen pulled up social media profiles. Melissa's Instagram is very educational. Lots of photos of vacations, jewelry, shopping sprees, all dated after she started dating Kyle. I scrolled through the images. Fury building with each post. Melissa in Vegas. Melissa showing off a new car. Melissa and Kyle at restaurants I couldn't afford. All while Mom wore the same clothes year after year. All while I bled money to keep them afloat. How long have you known? I asked Owen. Suspected since I met you. Started seriously looking about a year ago. He met my eyes steadily. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. And I wanted you to be ready to hear it. Am I ready? You're here, aren't you? Looking at all this instead of making excuses. He was right. Even 6 months ago, I might have found ways to rationalize this. Victor was struggling, he was doing his best, family helps family. But with 12 stitches in my scalp and years of financial abuse laid out in black and white, I was done rationalizing. So, what do we do? I asked. Owen smiled, the expression sharp. Remember my friend Marcus from the IIS. He owes me a favor. You're not seriously suggesting tax fraud is serious business, Jenna. And what Victor's doing, using your money to fund an illegal business structure, while maintaining a bigamous relationship. That's just the tip of the iceberg. He pulled up another file. I did some checking on his old construction business, the one that failed. He was skimming from clients, charging for materials never delivered, inflating labor costs, the works. 3 clients tried to sue, but Victor declared bankruptcy and walked away clean. How is he not in jail? Because he's smart enough to keep each scam small. Never enough to trigger major investigations. Always enough to need your money to stay afloat. Owen's expression darkened. But patterns add up. And buddy, has he created patterns? I thought about every birthday card with a check tucked inside. Every Christmas where I'd skip buying myself gifts to cover their emergency expenses. Every vacation I'd cancelled because Victor needed another bailout. I want to bury him, I said quietly. Owen took my hand. Then we will, legally, thoroughly, and completely. But Jenna, once we start this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family. What relationship? I laughed bitterly. The one where I pay them to treat me like garbage. Where my mother watches her husband assault me and does nothing. Where my brother calls me asking for money while his girlfriend posts about their shopping sprees. Fair point. Owen squeezed my fingers. Then let's talk strategy. First, we need to protect you. Separate any remaining financial connections. Document everything. Maybe talk to a lawyer about recovering some of your money. And then we package all this information in a way that the right people can't ignore. IRS for the tax fraud, state attorney for the bigamy, original wife for the hidden assets, and... He smiled grimly, his current employer for the background check fraud. He has a job. This was news to me. Part-time at a hardware store. Listed your mother as his wife on the application. Also claimed to have a clean record and no bankruptcies. Owen pulled up the application. All lies, grounds for immediate termination. I stared at the evidence surrounding us. Years of crimes, meticulously documented. All it would take was a few phone calls, a few emails, and Victor's world would come crashing down. He's going to know it was me, I said. Good, he replied. Let him know. You'll have a restraining order by then. And Jenna. Owen's voice was fierce. He should know. He should know that the ungrateful little he's been stealing from for years is the one who brought him down. Using the education he said you were too stupid to need. I thought about 15-year-old me being told I wasn't smart enough for college. 25-year-old me handing over my savings to keep his failing business alive. 32-year-old me bleeding on his office floor while he destroyed my wedding invitations. You're right, I said, sitting up straighter. He should know exactly who did this to him. Owen kissed my forehead. Careful of the bandages. That's my girl. Now, Let me show you what else I found about Lena Grant. Turns out she's been looking for Victor for years. Something about missing alimony payments, and a rather large life insurance policy she'd like to discuss. As Owen explained the full scope of Victor's deceptions, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: power. Not the power to hurt someone physically the way Victor had hurt me, but the power that comes from truth, from documentation, from refusing to be a victim anymore. He'd torn up my save-the-date cards, thinking he was destroying my happiness. Instead, he'd given me the push I needed to tear up something far more precious to him, the lies that kept his schemes running. And unlike my wedding invitations, what I was about to destroy could never be taped back together. The new save-the-date cards were nothing like the first batch. These weren't cream-colored with elegant script. They were plain white envelopes, the kind you'd use for business correspondence, but what they contained was far more explosive than any wedding announcement. I sat at my dining room table carefully organizing 3 distinct packets, each one tailored to its recipient. Each one a precision strike designed to dismantle Victor's carefully constructed house of lies. The first envelope was addressed to Human Resources at Henderson Hardware, where Victor had been working part-time for the past year. Inside, his job application claiming a spotless record alongside court documents showing his bankruptcy, the lawsuits from defrauded clients, and most damningly, proof that Linda Morrison, listed as his wife and emergency contact, wasn't legally married to him at all. Make sure to include the notarized copies, Owen reminded me, checking each document. We want this to be bulletproof. The second packet was thicker, meant for my mother's tax attorney. Mom had used the same firm for years, trusting them with returns that Victor prepared. They had no idea they'd been filing fraudulent documents. The envelope contained 5 years of bank records, showing the shell game Victor had been playing, moving money between accounts to hide income and inflate deductions. Every transfer I'd made was highlighted, showing how my loans had been laundered through various LLCs. Your mom's going to need representation, Owen said quietly. This gives her attorney a head start on damage control. I nodded, trying not to think about what this would do to her, but she'd made her choice when she stood in that doorway, watching me bleed, doing nothing. The third envelope made my hands shake slightly. Lena Grant, the legal Mrs. Victor Grant, living in Michigan and apparently searching for her errant husband for years. This packet was the most complete. Photos from his social media showing his life with my mother, copies of their void marriage license, his employment information, and a detailed accounting of where the money from various schemes had gone, including the account in her name that she probably didn't know existed. You sure about sending this one? Owen asked. Once she knows where he is. She deserves to know. She's as much a victim as anyone. I sealed the envelope. Besides, she's the only one who can file certain claims. Legal wife trumps fake wife in court. But I wasn't done. 3 more envelopes sat waiting. These ones were purely my own innovation. One for the IRS, with Marcus' direct contact information, courtesy of Owen. Every suspicious transaction, every questionable deduction, every LLC that existed only on paper, all documented, all traceable. The cover letter was professional, written with Owen's help, explaining my unwitting involvement in what I now understood to be tax evasion. One for the state attorney's office, focusing on the bigamy and fraud aspects. In Michigan, marrying someone while already married wasn't just void, it was criminal. Add in the financial fraud, the false identities, the asset hiding, and Victor was looking at serious charges. And the last one. I smiled grimly as I addressed it to Melissa Vaughn, Kyle's girlfriend. This one contained screenshots of the accounts in her name, the assets she was hiding for Victor, and a friendly note explaining how asset forfeiture worked when you were complicit in financial crimes. At 24, she probably had no idea what she'd gotten herself into. This was her wake-up call. You know Kyle's going to flip when Melissa gets this, Owen warned. Good. Maybe he'll finally understand that his father's business ventures aren't worth protecting. I added stamps to each envelope. Or maybe he'll keep enabling Victor. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. We drove to the post office together. Owen's hand steady on my back as I approached the counter. 6 envelopes, 6 bombs, ready to detonate in Victor's carefully constructed world. Certified mail for all of these, I told the clerk. Return receipt requested. Each tracking number felt like a small victory. Proof that I'd sent them. No taking it back now. As we walked back to the car, my phone buzzed. * Mom, Jenna, please. Victor is sorry about what happened. He wants to apologize. Can you come for dinner Sunday? * I showed Owen the text. He raised an eyebrow. The classic cycle, he said. Abuse, then apology, then everything's fine until the next time. I typed back, no, don't contact me again unless it's through lawyers. The phone immediately rang. I declined the call. It rang again. Block her, Owen suggested gently. At least for now. I did, I said, feeling a strange mix of relief and grief. 17 years of a toxic relationship ended with the press of a button. Want to know something funny? I said as we drove home. I spent over $90,000 trying to buy their love, and in the end, all it cost me was postage to get free. 6 stamps to freedom. Owen grinned. Best investment you ever made. Back home, I opened my laptop and created a new document, wedding guest list revised. The first version had included family out of obligation, tradition, some misguided hope for reconciliation. This version would be different. Who actually brings joy to your life? Owen asked, reading over my shoulder. Who celebrates your success instead of exploiting it? Who would you call if you needed help? The list was shorter, but so much more meaningful. College friends who'd watched me struggle with family drama for years. Co-workers who'd covered for me when I had to leave early to handle another emergency. Owen's family, who'd welcomed me without question or judgment. Smaller wedding, I mused. But happier. Quality over quantity, Owen kissed my temple. Besides, we'll save money not feeding people who don't actually care about us. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this Jenna Morrison? A woman's voice, older, tired. Yes, this is Jenna. I'll be in town tomorrow. We need to talk. My heart hammered. The first envelope must have arrived early. Oh, okay. Where? Wherever you feel safe, and thank you. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been looking for him for 5 years. You have no idea what this means. After we arranged to meet at a public cafe, I hung up and looked at Owen. It's starting. Scared. Terrified, I admitted. But also free. Is that weird? Not at all, he pulled me close. You're taking control. That's what freedom feels like. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those envelopes making their way through the postal system. By Friday, every one of Victor's secrets would be in the hands of people who could do something about them. I thought about Mom, probably pacing her kitchen, trying to figure out how to fix this. About Kyle, oblivious to the storm heading his way. About Victor, still believing he was untouchable, that his control over us was absolute. He'd taught me to be practical, to think about money and security above all else. He'd probably thought he was keeping me in line, making me dependent, crushing my spirit with every demand for cash. Instead, he'd taught me to document everything, to keep records, to understand financial systems well enough to recognize fraud when I saw it, to value my own worth enough to finally say, no. You awake? Owen whispered in the darkness. Yeah, I mumbled, having second thoughts. No. I rolled over to face him. I spent half my life trying to earn their love. I'm done. Let them earn their own consequences for once. I love you, he said simply. I love you, too. I traced his face in the darkness. Thank you for showing me I deserved better. You always knew. You just needed time to believe it. As dawn broke, I thought about those 6 envelopes again. Not save-the-date cards for a wedding, but something better. Invitations to accountability. Announcements that the Bank of Jenna was permanently closed. Proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't violence or cruelty. It's simple, documented truth. Victor had torn up my wedding invitations, thinking he was putting me in my place. Instead, he'd inspired me to send out announcements of my own. And unlike my wedding, everyone invited to this particular event would definitely show up. Whether they wanted to or not. The explosion came faster than I'd expected. Within a week, the carefully aimed missiles I'd sent had found their targets, and the resulting chaos was both satisfying and surreal to witness from a distance. It started with a voicemail from Henderson Hardware's HR department, confirming they'd received my package and taken appropriate action. Owen's contact at the courthouse later confirmed that Victor had been escorted out mid-shift, his employee ID confiscated on the spot. Apparently, he tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, Owen reported, scrolling through texts from his network. Said his ex-wife was trying to sabotage him out of jealousy. Which ex-wife? I asked dryly. The legal one he abandoned or the illegal one he's living with? The IIS moved with surprising speed. Tuesday morning, an official email arrived requesting my cooperation with an ongoing investigation. The tone was polite, but firm. They'd found enough in my initial package to warrant a full audit going back 7 years. Marcus had personally fast-tracked it. They are especially interested in the LLC shell game, Owen explained after reviewing the request. Moving money between businesses that don't actually conduct business. That's a red flag visible from space. I scheduled a meeting with their investigators, bringing every receipt, every bank statement, every text message begging for money. My new lawyer, recommended by Owen's firm, accompanied me, ensuring I was treated as a witness, not a suspect. You did the right thing coming forward, the lead investigator assured me. Your documentation is impressively thorough. But the real fireworks came from Lena Grant. She'd driven 10 hours from Michigan, arriving in town like an avenging angel in a sensible sedan. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Both of us nervous. Both of us angry at the same man for different reasons. 5 years, she said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from me. 5 years I've been trying to track him down. Private investigators, skip traces, the works, and you found him because he was stupid enough to assault you. Lena was in her late 50s, well-dressed but tired-looking, with steel grey hair and sharp eyes that probably once trusted too easily. Like me, like Mom. I'm sorry, I started, but she waved me off. Don't apologize for his crimes. God knows I did that for too long. She pulled out a folder. I brought some things you might find interesting, since we are apparently sister wives in Victor's twisted world. The documents she spread out were damning. Their divorce papers, which Victor had signed but never filed. Life insurance policies with forged signatures. Business loans taken out in her name without her knowledge. The scope of his fraud went back decades. He cleaned out our retirement accounts before he disappeared, Lena explained. Told me he was investing in a sure thing. That sure thing was a new identity. And your mother? Apparently, she doesn't know, I said, feeling compelled to defend Mom despite everything. I mean, she thinks they are really married. Then she's in for a rude awakening. Lena's smile was sharp, My lawyer is filing emergency motions today. Asset freezes, fraud charges, the works. Your mother's house, the one Victor put in his name for tax purposes, that's marital property. My marital property. My stomach twisted. She'll be homeless. Lena's smile was sharp. She'll be free, Lena corrected. What she does with that freedom is up to her. We talked for 2 hours, comparing notes, filling in blanks in each other's timelines. Lena had receipts for everything. Victor's pattern of fraud was consistent across decades and state lines. He'd find vulnerable women, establish control, drain their resources, then move on when the heat got too high. You're lucky, she told me as we prepared to leave. You got out before he completely destroyed you. Your mother, she might not be so fortunate. That evening, the call started. Carl first, screaming about his girlfriend being questioned by the FBI about accounts in her name. This is your fault, he raged through my voicemail. Melissa's terrified. Her parents are freaking out. How could you do this to family? I didn't call back. He'd figure out soon enough that his father had made Melissa an accomplice to federal crimes. If she was smart, she'd cooperate fully and distance herself from the Grant men. Mom's calls I couldn't bring myself to listen to. The previews on my voicemail showed increasingly frantic messages. Jenna, there's some confusion about the house. The IRS froze our accounts. This has to be a mistake. Someone named Lena came to the door with a sheriff. That, please, baby. I need you to fix this. Fix this. After everything, she still expected me to clean up Victor's messes. Still saw me as the family ATM and problem solver, not the daughter he'd assaulted while she watched. Wednesday brought a registered letter from Lena's attorney. Victor had been served with papers, fraud charges, asset recovery, and immediate eviction from the house he'd illegally claimed as his own. The Michigan courts moved fast when presented with clear evidence of bigamy and financial crimes. He's trying to run, Owen reported, monitoring social media and public records. Cleaned out what accounts weren't frozen. Packed up his truck. But here's the thing. Lena's lawyer anticipated that there's a warrant. He won't get far. Sure enough, Thursday morning brought news of Victor's arrest at a truck stop 2 states away. The charges were extensive: bigamy, fraud, tax evasion, identity theft. His mugshot showed a man who'd aged years in days. His usual arrogance replaced by shock. I printed the mugshot and framed it. Not out of spite. Okay, maybe a little spite, but as a reminder, this was what happened when you mistook kindness for weakness. When you assumed family bonds meant carte blanche to abuse and exploit. Friday, an email arrived that made everything worth it. Ms. Morrison, this is notification that your financial fraud claim has been approved for expedited processing. Based on the evidence provided, you may be entitled to recover up to 80% of the funds transferred under fraudulent pretenses. Please contact our office to begin the recovery process. 80% of $93,000. Not everything, but enough. Enough to pay for the wedding without stress. Enough to start married life without the weight of years of financial abuse. Enough to prove that standing up for yourself could have tangible rewards. Look at this, Owen said, showing me his phone. Someone had posted Victor's arrest record on the community Facebook page. The comments were revealing. Apparently, I wasn't his only victim in town. Other contractors shared stories of being stiffed. Suppliers mentioned suspicious orders. Former employees talked about bounced paychecks. He hurt so many people, I murmured. And you stopped him, Owen reminded me. Your courage gave them closure, too. That afternoon, a hand-delivered letter arrived. Mom's handwriting, shaky, but recognizable. I'm staying with a friend from church. The house is gone. Kyle won't speak to me. Victor is in jail. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. Despite everything, I'm still your mother, but I'll never forgive you for this. I read it twice, waiting for the guilt to hit. Instead, I felt empty. She'd made her choice every day for 17 years. She'd chosen him when he belittled me, when he stole from me, when he hit me. Now she could live with those choices. You okay? Owen asked, finding me staring at the letter. She'll never forgive me, I said. Do you need her forgiveness? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I need my own. And I think I finally have it. That night, we ordered Chinese food and updated our wedding plans. The venue would be smaller now. No need to accommodate family who'd never really been family at all. The ceremony simpler, more intimate. The guest list filled with people who actually loved us. Any regrets? Owen asked as we ate lo mein straight from the container. Only one, I admitted. I wish I'd done this years ago. You weren't ready years ago. You did it when you could, and that's what matters. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Whatever new crisis was brewing, it could wait. I was done being the family fixer, the perpetual victim. The ATM with a pulse. Tomorrow, I'd meet with lawyers about recovering my money. Next week, I'd testify to investigators about years of fraud. Next month, I'd marry the man who'd shown me I deserved better than accepting abuse as the price of family. But tonight, I sat in my peaceful apartment with my loving partner, eating takeout and planning a future free from toxic obligations. The explosion I triggered was still reverberating through multiple lives, tearing down lies and exposing crimes. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't painless, but it was justice. And for the first time in 17 years, that felt better than keeping the peace. Sunday arrived with unseasonable rain, matching my mood as I prepared for the confrontation I'd been dreading. Mom had been calling from different numbers, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Finally, I'd agreed to meet, but only in public, only with Owen present, and only for 30 minutes. We chose a diner on the edge of town, neutral ground where neither of us had memories. I arrived early, selecting a booth with clear sight lines to both exits, old habits from years of reading Victor's moods, anticipating when to flee. Mom walked in 10 minutes late, and I barely recognized her. In just 2 weeks, she'd aged years. Her usually perfect hair hung limp, her clothes wrinkled, her face drawn and hollow. She'd lost the house, the husband, the life she'd sacrificed everything to maintain, including me. Jenna, she slid into the opposite booth, clutching a worn purse. Thank you for seeing me. Owen sat beside me, a quiet presence of support. Mom's eyes flicked to him with barely concealed resentment. Does he have to be here? Yes, I said simply. What do you want, Mom? She flinched at my tone, cold, businesslike, nothing like the daughter who'd always tried to keep the peace. I need help, she admitted, the words clearly costing her. The shelter it's temporary. I have nowhere to go, no money. Kyle won't return my calls. And Victor is in jail where he belongs. I finished. He's my husband. No, he's not. I pulled out copies of the marriage documents Lena had shared. He's Lena Grant's husband. He has been for 25 years. Your marriage was never legal. I watched the blood drain from her face as she stared at the papers. Her hands shook as she turned pages, seeing proof of the lie she'd built her life around. No, she whispered. We had a ceremony. I wore white. You were there. A ceremony doesn't make it legal when he's already married. I kept my voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. You've been his mistress for 17 years. Nothing more. Don't be cruel, she pleaded. Cruel. The word tasted bitter. Cruel is watching your husband beat your daughter and doing nothing. Cruel is choosing him over me every single time. Cruel is demanding I fix the mess you helped create. I didn't know, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You knew he hit me. You knew he was stealing my money. You knew the business was shady. You signed those documents, Mom. Your signature is on fraud after fraud. He said it was legal, she sobbed. He said. And you believed him because it was easier than asking questions. Because questioning him might mean losing your comfortable life. I laughed, harsh and humorless. How's that working out now? Owen touched my arm gently, a reminder to breathe. I forced myself to calm down. Mom was crying now. Ugly tears that might have moved me once. I gave up everything for him, she whispered. My job, my friends, my family. You gave up your daughter, I corrected, by choice. Every bruise you ignored, every cry for help, you dismissed. Every time you told me to just keep the peace, those were choices. I was scared. So was I. The words exploded out of me. I was 15, Mom. 15, and trapped with a man who hated me for existing, and my mother, the one person who should have protected me, chose him instead. The diner had gone quiet around us. Other patrons pretending not to stare at the drama unfolding in booth 7. I didn't care. What was I supposed to do? Mom's voice was small, defeated. Leave? Fight? Choose me. Anything except what you did, which was nothing. She fumbled in her purse, pulling out a crumpled envelope. I brought this. It's not much, but... I recognized it immediately, the emergency cash she'd always hidden in her jewelry box. Maybe $300. Her secret stash that Victor supposedly never knew about. Keep it, I said. You'll need it more than I do. I can't. Jenna, please. I need help. Just until I get on my feet. I'll pay you back. Like Victor paid me back. I shook my head. I'm done being the family bank. Done enabling dysfunction. Done setting myself on fire to keep you warm. So, you're just going to let me be homeless? Your own mother. I'm letting you experience consequences. I pulled out a different envelope, sliding it across the table. But I'm not heartless, unlike you. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was information about women's services, transitional housing programs, job training for older women starting over. Also a check, not cash she could hand to Victor if he got out on bail, but a check made out to the women's shelter. This covers 2 months at the transitional housing program, I explained. They'll help you get on your feet, find work, rebuild, but that's it. That's all you get from me. 2 months. Then what? Then you figure it out, like I did when I was 18 and escaping that house. Like I've been figuring it out ever since, while hemorrhaging money to support your husband's crimes. He's not my husband, she said bitterly, the reality finally sinking in. No, he's not. And maybe that's a gift. You're free now, Mom. Free to be whoever you want without him controlling every move. The question is, who are you without Victor? She stared at the shelter information like it was written in a foreign language. Then find out. Get therapy. The shelter offers it free. Get a job. Make friends who don't enable abusers. Build a life worth living. I stood up. Owen rising with me. But build it without me. I'm done. Jenna, wait. I need you to hear this, I said, turning back. I will never forgive you for choosing him over me. For every time you looked away when I needed protection, for making me feel like his abuse was my fault, for not being a good enough daughter. Her face crumpled. I'm sorry. No, you're sorry now because you need something. You weren't sorry when you had a house and a husband and my money flowing in every month. Your apology means nothing. So that's it. You're just walking away from your mother. I'm walking away from my abuser's enabler, I corrected. The fact that you gave birth to me doesn't erase 17 years of betrayal. I wish you well. Mom, I hope you get help. I hope you build a better life, but I won't be part of it. What about your wedding? She called after us as we headed for the door. Don't I get to see my only daughter get married? I paused at the exit. You made your choice every day for 17 years. You chose him. Now live with it. Outside, the rain had stopped. Weak sunlight broke through the clouds, and I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in years. You okay? Owen asked, wrapping an arm around me. She'll never understand, I said. She'll always see herself as the victim. Victor's victim, my victim, everyone's victim, but never the architect of her own misery. Probably. Does that matter? I thought about it as we walked to the car. No, it doesn't, I said. I said what I needed to say. I gave her more help than she ever gave me. My conscience is clear. For what it's worth, Owen said, I'm proud of you. That took incredible strength. It took too long, I corrected, but at least it's done. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Asterisk Kyle, Mom's at a shelter because of you. Hope you're proud of yourself. Asterisk I screenshot and blocked the number. Then I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony with Owen, watching the sunset over a life finally free from toxic obligations. Think they'll ever understand? I asked. Does it matter if they do? I considered that, sipping my wine. Mom was in a shelter, beginning the long journey of rebuilding. At 58, Carl was facing the reality that his girlfriend might be prosecuted for her involvement in Victor's schemes. Victor himself was sitting in a cell. His carefully constructed house of cards collapsed around him. And me? I was planning a wedding with a man who loved me, starting therapy to deal with years of trauma, recovering money that was rightfully mine, building a life based on truth instead of manipulation. No, I decided. It doesn't matter. Understanding requires empathy, and they never had any for me. Why should I waste mine on them? Owen clinked his glass against mine. To freedom. To freedom, I agreed. And to families we choose, not the ones we are stuck with. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere across town, my mother was learning to survive without a man to define her. Somewhere in a jail cell, Victor was discovering that his victims had voices after all. And here in this moment, I was finally free. Not just from them, but from the guilt that had chained me to their dysfunction for so long. It had cost me $93,000 and 17 years of pain to buy this freedom. Worth every penny. The morning after meeting Mom, I woke to a string of notifications that made my blood run cold. Kyle had taken to social media, painting me as the villain who destroyed our family. My sister cares more about money than blood, his Facebook post read. She sent our father to prison and made our mother homeless. All over some petty family drama. Money changes people. The comments were already piling up. Extended family I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions. Cousins calling me heartless. Aunts wondering what kind of daughter abandons her mother. Family friends expressing shock that sweet little Jenna could be so cruel. But then something unexpected happened. Melissa Vaughn commented, "Kyle, stop. Your dad used me to hide stolen money. The FBI showed me proof. Your sister saved me from federal charges by exposing this. Delete this post before you make things worse. The comment disappeared within minutes, but I'd already screenshotted it. More comments followed. These from people in town. Victor Grant owes my company $15,000 for materials he never paid for. He bounced 3 paychecks when I worked for him. Maybe ask why your dad had 2 wives before blaming your sister. Owen found me staring at my phone, shaking. Hey, don't let him get to you. He's trying to rally the family against me. Let him try. Owen took my phone, setting it aside. Anyone who believes his version without asking for yours isn't worth worrying about. But the damage was spreading. My work email chimed with a message from HR, forwarding a concerning email they'd received from a family member about my unstable behavior and vindictive tendencies. Kyle had emailed my employer. That little, I breathed, reading his poison. He'd painted me as mentally unstable. Suggested I was embezzling funds like I'd falsely accused Victor of doing. Demanded they investigate my work accounts. Forward it to your lawyer, Owen advised, already composing his own response. This is defamation and harassment. My boss called within an hour. Jenna, we need to talk about this email. My stomach dropped. I can explain. No need. We've worked together for 8 years. I know your character, but this is concerning. Not about you, about whoever sent it. Do you feel safe? The relief nearly made me cry. Yes. My lawyer is handling it. Good. Take a few days if you need them. And Jenna, we ran a full audit of your accounts, just to shut down any questions. You're cleaner than clean. Whoever your family member is, they picked the wrong target. After hanging up, I called my lawyer. Within hours, Kyle was served with a cease and desist letter. His attempts to destroy my career had failed. But the intent was clear: if he couldn't have his comfortable life, neither could I. That afternoon brought another surprise. A call from Lena Grant. I wanted to thank you, she said without preamble. And warn you, Victor made bail. My blood chilled. How? Your brother put up his car as collateral. Victor's staying with some friend, but he's been calling everyone trying to find out where your mother is. And you? I asked. The restraining order only works if he's caught violating it. Be careful, Jenna. When cornered, Victor gets dangerous. I learned that the hard way. I thanked her for the warning and immediately called Owen. We decided I'd stay at his apartment until things calmed down. I packed essentials, including all my documentation, and left my place just as the sun was setting. Good thing, too. My neighbor texted me that night. Some older guy was banging on your door around 8 p.m. seemed angry. I called the police, but he left before they arrived. Victor had found my apartment. The next few days blurred together. Legal meetings, police reports, statements to various investigators. Through it all, Kyle kept escalating his harassment campaign, mass emails to extended family with his version of events, posts on LinkedIn suggesting I was professionally unstable, even a Yelp review of my company claiming I was unethical and vindictive. Each attack was met with a legal response. Each lie countered with truth, but it was exhausting. Why is he doing this? I asked Owen one night, emotionally drained. Victor used him too. Made Melissa an accomplice. Why defend him? Because admitting Victor is a criminal means admitting he was fooled, Owen suggested. It's easier to blame you than face his own complicity. The breaking point came Thursday evening. I was reviewing wedding vendor contracts when an unknown number called. Against my better judgment, I answered. You ruined everything. Kyle's voice was slurred. Drunk? You know what Dad told me. He said I was the son he always wanted. Said I'd inherit everything. Now there's nothing to inherit because of you. Kyle, you need help. Shut up. You were always jealous. Always trying to make me look bad. Well, guess what? I know things about you, too. About that time in college when I hung up. There was no time in college. He was inventing scandals now. Desperate to hurt me the way he felt hurt. But his next text made my blood run cold. Maybe Owen should know what kind of person he's marrying. I wonder if he'd still want you if he knew everything. He's threatening to make up stories about me, I told Owen, showing him the messages. Owen's face darkened. Forward everything to the lawyer. This is escalating beyond harassment. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself writing a letter I'd never send. Dear Kyle, you were 3 when Mom brought me back from college for your birthday. You were so excited to see your big brother. You hugged my legs and begged me to read you stories. I loved you instantly. This little brother I'd never asked for but was blessed to have. I watched you grow up in that house, and I tried to shield you when I could. When Victor's temper flared, I'd distract him. When money was tight because of his schemes, I'd send extra so you wouldn't go without. I convinced myself I was protecting you. But I see now that I was enabling the very system that corrupted you by covering for Victor's failures. I helped create the illusion that his way of life worked. You grew up thinking manipulation and fraud were normal. That family meant unlimited financial support regardless of behavior. I failed you by not standing up sooner, by not showing you that real strength means accountability, not exploitation, by letting you believe that blood entitled you to my bank account. Now you're 21, drunk dialing threats, trying to destroy my life because the gravy train stopped. You've become Victor's true son in all the worst ways. And that breaks my heart more than any of your attacks ever could. I still love the little boy who begged for bedtime stories, but that boy is gone, replaced by a young man who'd rather destroy his sister than admit his father is a criminal. I hope someday you break free like I did. Until then, I'm done being your victim, too. Your sister, whether you like it or not, Jenna. I saved the letter in my drafts. A catharsis I needed, but he didn't deserve. The little boy I'd loved was gone, poisoned by 17 years of Victor's influence and Mom's enabling in trying to protect him. I'd only delayed his inevitable corruption. Friday morning brought news. Kyle had been arrested for drunk driving. He'd blown twice the legal limit, and had been ranting about me to the officers. The bodycam footage, my lawyer informed me, will be very helpful in our harassment case. He's self-destructing, I told Owen, just like Victor always did when things didn't go his way. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Owen agreed. But Jenna, this isn't your fault. You didn't make him drive drunk, or send those threats. He's choosing this path. I knew Owen was right, but watching my baby brother follow Victor's footsteps into self-destruction hurt more than I'd expected. Another casualty of our toxic family dynamic. Another life warped by Victor's influence. That evening, I made a decision. I called my lawyer and asked him to add Kyle to the no-contact order. If he wanted to self-destruct, he'd do it without me as his target. I'm done feeling guilty for other people's choices, I told Owen. Mom chose Victor. Kyle's choosing to be like Victor. I choose peace. And I choose you, Owen said, pulling me close, always. As we sat together planning our wedding, our small, drama-free, family-free wedding, I felt the last chains of obligation finally break. Mom was in transitional housing, learning to stand on her own. Victor was facing federal charges that would likely put him away for years. Kyle was facing his own legal troubles, consequences of his own making. And me? I was free. Free to build a life based on love, not manipulation. Free to have a family of choice, not chance. Free to keep my hard-earned money for my own dreams, not other people's schemes. The price of freedom had been high, $93,000, 17 years of pain, and the loss of my biological family. But as Owen and I addressed our real save-the-date cards to people who actually loved us, I knew it was worth every penny, every tear, every hard choice. Some prices are too high to keep paying, and some freedoms are too precious to surrender. I sealed the last envelope to Owen's parents, who'd welcomed me without question, and smiled. These invitations would reach their destinations intact, be received with joy, and mark the beginning of something beautiful. Unlike the ones Victor tore up, these save-the-date cards would fulfill their purpose, announcing a future built on truth, respect, and love. And this time, no one could tear that apart. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright. Nothing like the storm I'd weathered to get here. 6 months had passed since I'd sent those fateful envelopes, and the landscape of my life had completely transformed. Victor was serving 5 to 7 years in federal prison. The charges had stacked up like dominoes: tax fraud, identity theft, bigamy, wire fraud. Lena Grant had gotten her divorce finalized and recovered a surprising amount of assets, including the house my mother had thought was theirs. She'd sent me a thank you card with a simple message. "You gave me my life back." Mom was still in transitional housing, but had found work as a receptionist at a dental office. We hadn't spoken since that day at the diner. I'd heard through the grapevine that she was attending therapy, slowly rebuilding herself. Part of me hoped she'd find peace. A larger part had made peace with not being part of that journey. Kyle had pleaded guilty to harassment and drunk driving charges. The judge had mandated rehab and therapy as part of his probation. Melissa had broken up with him after cooperating fully with the FBI, avoiding charges herself. Last I heard, he was living with a friend, working construction, trying to figure out who he was without Victor's influence. He was 21, still young enough to change course if he wanted to. But today wasn't about them. Today was about the family I'd chosen. I stood in the bridal suite at the small botanical garden we'd selected, surrounded by the people who'd stood by me. My college roommate Sarah, who'd listened to years of family drama without judgment. Owen's sister Emma, who'd welcomed me like the sister she'd always wanted. My co-workers who'd become friends, who'd protected me when Kyle tried to destroy my career. "You look radiant," Sarah said, adjusting my simple but elegant dress. No princess ball gown or elaborate train, just clean lines and comfortable fabric that felt like me. "I feel free," I replied, and meant it. The ceremony space was intimate, 50 chairs instead of the 200 we'd originally planned. Every face was someone who genuinely celebrated our love. No obligatory invitations, no keeping up appearances, no toxic dynamics lurking beneath forced smiles. As I walked down the aisle alone, my choice, not a statement, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Each step represented a choice to value myself, to stop accepting crumbs and calling them love, to build something real instead of maintaining something toxic. Owen waited at the altar, tears unashamed in his eyes. This man who'd seen me at my worst and helped me find my best. Who'd showed me that love meant support, not control. Who'd stood by me as I demolished my family's house of cards and helped me build something stronger from the rubble. The ceremony was simple. Our vows personal. Owen promised to always be my soft place to land in a hard world. I promised to never again sacrifice my worth for anyone's comfort. We both promised to build a family based on respect, honesty, and genuine care. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and the small gathering erupted in genuine joy. The reception was perfect in its simplicity: good food, better company, and speeches that celebrated our future rather than awkwardly navigating our pasts. Owen's father welcomed me to their family with warmth that made me cry the good kind of tears, the healing kind. During the father-daughter dance, traditionally reserved for brides and their fathers, I danced with Owen instead. We'd rewritten the rules, created new traditions that honored our reality rather than clinging to fantasies of what family should be. Any regrets? Owen whispered as we swayed to our song. I thought about the empty chairs where my family should have been. The mother who'd chosen a con man over her daughter. The brother who'd chosen hatred over healing. The stepfather who'd seen me only as a resource to exploit. No, I said honestly. They made their choices. I made mine. And I choose this. Us. Every time. As the evening wound down, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The stars were brilliant above the garden. And I found myself thinking about that 15-year-old girl who'd been told she wasn't smart enough for college, wasn't worth protecting, wasn't really family. She'd proven them all wrong. My phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app. The latest installment of recovered funds had been deposited. To date, I'd gotten back nearly $70,000 of the $93,000 Victor had stolen. The money had paid for this wedding, would fund our honeymoon, would start our married life without the financial strain his theft had caused. But more than money, I'd recovered myself, my worth, my voice, my right to be treated with respect and love. There you are, Owen found me, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Emma's looking for you. Something about a surprise. The surprise was a memory book the wedding party had compiled. Letters from friends, photos from happy moments, promises of future gatherings and chosen family celebrations, no toxic history, no painful memories, just love and support and hope. This is what family really looks like, Emma said, hugging me tight. Welcome officially to ours. As Owen and I left for our honeymoon, 2 weeks in Italy, something I never could have afforded while funding Victor's schemes, I felt complete in a way I'd never experienced. Not because I'd found a man to complete me, but because I'd found the strength to complete myself. The last save-the-date card I'd sent had been to myself. A promise that I deserved to be celebrated, protected, loved. Our car pulled away from the venue, cans rattling behind it, our friends waving goodbye. In my purse was one final piece of mail I'd received that morning. A letter with no return address. My mother's handwriting. I understand now. Be happy. 4 words that might have meant everything once. Now they were just words from a stranger who'd chosen too late to see me clearly. I tucked the letter away, not out of sentiment, but closure. She understood now. Good for her. But I'd moved beyond needing her understanding. As we drove toward our future, Owen reached over and took my hand. So, Mrs. Fitzgerald, what's the plan? I'd kept my last name professionally, but taken his personally, another choice that was mine to make. The plan is to live happily, to build something real, to never again mistake dysfunction for love or obligation for family. I love our plan, he said, bringing my hand to his lips. So did I. It had cost almost $100,000 and 17 years of pain to learn the difference between real love and toxic obligation. But sitting beside the man who'd helped me find my worth, heading toward a future we'd build together, I knew the truth. Freedom is priceless. Self-respect is invaluable. And real love, the kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down, is worth more than all the money I'd ever lost. The save-the-date cards that started this journey had been torn to pieces. But like me, something beautiful had risen from those scattered fragments. A life authentic and whole. A love that was real, a future that was mine to shape. And this time, no one could tear it apart, because this time I wasn't asking for permission to be happy. I was simply choosing it, one saved date at a time.